The question is that this bill be now read a second time, and I call the member for Durack.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Another year and yet another 12 months that Labor still has not learnt from their mistakes. I'm pleased today to rise to speak to the Labor 2013-14 Budget Savings Measures No. 2 bill. Mr Deputy Speaker, as those who frequent this chamber have heard me say before, good economic management is a part of this side of the chamber's DNA. Poor financial management is in Labor's DNA. Mr Deputy Speaker, it is us on this side of the chamber, the Turnbull Trust Coalition Government, who understands economics and we understand business. This government will have reduced Labor's budget deficit from $48 billion in 2013-14 to just $7 billion in 5 years. Yes, those opposite, they sometimes have a knack for producing the glossy brochures and perhaps the catchy slogans, Deputy Speaker, but it's this government who understands that it is business, not governments, who create jobs. It is government's role to support business, and when you support business, you support jobs, and it is the excellent management of this government which has presided over a drop in the unemployment rate from 6.2% to 5.9% in the month of October. Deputy Speaker, 231 and 702,000 more Australians are in jobs this year alone. Extra jobs, I should say. It's worth repeating. 231, 702 more Australians are in jobs and unemployment has dropped to 5.9%. These are key indicators that this government is a superior financial manager. Last week, the Reserve Bank Governor, Glenn Stevens, acknowledged that there are several positive signs about how our economy was performing through the transition to a more diversified economy. Business investment is growing as the Australian economy transitions from the investment phase of the mining boom to a more diversified economy. Mr Stevens said our economy was performing positively through this transition period. Mr Deputy Speaker, including defence and public corporations, this government has increased Commonwealth investment to 6.3% of total investment, being 1.2% higher than under the previous wasteful regime. When we look more broadly at public investment, there are currently 88 major infrastructure projects under construction in Australia, with a further 95 projects in the pre-construction phase. Deputy Speaker, the Turnbull government is providing $50 billion in infrastructure funding between the 2015 period and 2019-20. This incredibly mammoth drive in investment will not only deliver much needed amenities and services across Australia, but will drive growth in this great country of ours, and not forgetting the jobs that it will create along the way. Deputy Speaker, this is real action compared to the Leader of the Opposition's glib infrastructure ideas announcement that we heard in October. Not one single idea related to any of those 9 projects in Western Australia, and despite her nearly 20 years of experience in state and federal parliament, I'm disappointed that the member of Perth defended these 9 infrastructure projects, given none of them were in Western Australia and of course none of them were in my electorate of Durack. I'd say that's pretty embarrassing for the member for Perth. In the government's 2-year report, Sticking to Our Plan, Backing Hard-Working Australians, it highlighted many key economic facts about this government. For example, jobs growth has been stronger than any other G7 nation over the past year. There have been over 335 additional jobs created since we were elected in September 2013. What I'm particularly pleased about, Deputy Speaker, is that female workforce participation is at record levels. More than 171,000 women are in jobs, further jobs, since coming to office. And this is just a small snapshot of this government's record. Hard-working families from right around the vast electorate of Durack, from as far north as the Kimberley to as far west as the Gascoyne, to the deep south of Durack, of the great wheatbelt towns like Cunderdin, Tammin, Calaberin and Merredin, they thank me for the rise in consumer confidence in the last few months. Deputy Speaker, consumer confidence has risen 9% since mid-September. Consumer confidence leads to increased spending, which builds confidence in the business community. Deputy Speaker, this leads to more part-time and casual jobs for people of all descriptions, from the more senior age citizens to students and mothers in my regional, rural and remote towns. The Turnbull government is working towards getting the budget back into surplus by controlling expenditure and growing Australia's economic pie. That's what good financial managers do. If we remained on Labor's spending path, the budget would be almost $80 billion worse off over this budget year and the forward estimates. Deputy Speaker, the Labor Party claimed to be the party for the working class. However, if this was true, then 98% of voters would be voting for them. But of course they don't, because they know that we on this side of the chamber, this government, are truly the team for the working class. We save Australians money. We pay back the debt, which reduces the taxes for all Australians in the long term. Mr Deputy Speaker, when those opposite were in office, they funded everything and anything. Who can forget the Pink Bats installation disaster? Everyone and everything that came a knocking got a check. Irrespective of purpose or priority, the previous Labor government were the best friends of everybody, from vigilante protesters and extremist Green groups. Small minority groups who stood for little other than self-interest. They loved the previous Labor government, and why wouldn't they? While hard-working Australians are left to shoulder the burden left by a populist and irresponsible government. While in office, the Labor Party set us on an irresponsible trajectory towards $660 billion in the red. And this legacy was also $123 billion in cumulative deficits. Since coming to office, this government has reduced real growth in government expenditure from 3.6% on average per annum when those were in office down to 1% on average annually over the 2015-16 forward estimates. We have made massive savings for hard-working Australians to the tune of $9.4 billion in expenditure from the 2015-16 budget. As a result of this government's budget measures, the budget bottom line is around $110 billion better off over the relevant forward estimates period, with many of these improvements structural and improving over the time. Mr Deputy Speaker, this is good news for the hard-working people of Durack. Mr Deputy Speaker, this bill is necessary reform for higher education students who are embarking on arguably the greatest investment of all. Part of this bill includes an efficiency dividend for higher education grants to Commonwealth contributions under the Commonwealth Grant Scheme for higher education. And I do believe that these reforms are fair. They are also essential in making significant budget savings. While those opposite, and we've heard it here today, echo a scare campaign on $100,000 degrees and other issues relating to higher education reform, it's worth noting that the Higher Education Loan Program only comes into effect when the former student earns a certain income. This bill will also allow interest to be charged to certain debts incurred by students on youth allowance, Austudy, ab-study, living allowance and fares allowance. It is completely unacceptable and, more importantly, unfair that those who've got a debt with Centrelink avoid repaying the debt, and this is also covered in the bill we are debating. These measures encourage those, where applicable, and who have the financial capability to repay a debt. This means that those who have a debt with an incentive to make a repayment to avoid the interest charge in the future. So, Deputy Speaker, in conclusion, I encourage those opposite to support these budget savings. For my grandchildren and for their grandchildren's sake, we must continue to find ways to save money, to save the budget, and I commend this bill to the House.
Thank the member for Durack.